Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Cody Engel. I am a staff software engineer, and in this coding tutorial series, we're going to build an Android application from scratch. So for this application, we are going to use this dad joke API that I found on the internet. It's free, easy to use. So we're going to use that as our way of pulling in data and just kind of show you how I would build it in 2019. So we're going to use things like view models. We're going to use Retrofit for handling our networking. We're going to do this with test-driven development. And we're going to do kind of like clean-ish architecture. So we're going to break up the application into having a repository, a domain layer, so like for use cases and stuff, our view model, and then finally our view. So for this series, what I'm going to try is doing it just kind of like I'm starting from scratch. There's no real script with it, and just kind of show you what I would do. So I may pull up some documentation here and there, all of that stuff. So I hope it ends up being very helpful for you just to see how people are, building Android applications in 2019. So with that, let's get into it.
All right, so the first step to install Android Studio is to head over to developer.android.com/studio. I will include the link to this in the video description below as well. But from there, you just want to come over here and do download Android Studio. Go ahead and agree to all of that, and then go ahead and start downloading. So if you are on Windows or Linux, this should figure out what to download it for. For me, I'm on Mac, so it's downloading the DMG. And this is now the third time that I've downloaded Android Studio today because I'm trying to do a completely fresh install, and on Mac OS, it is surprisingly difficult to do a fresh install. But so from here, we're opening it up, and then now I just need to move Android Studio to Applications, replace. Hopefully this does it. I've deleted almost every trace of Android Studio, and so there we go. Do Android Studio, and we'll go ahead and say open. All right, cool. So this is what we should see. I'm going to let the train go by before continuing though. All right, I think the trains are done. So so you should see something potentially like this, missing SDK. So it's looking good for this setup now. So for that, you'll just want to go through the setup wizard. So we'll see you need to download the Android SDK as well as the Android SDK platform. So today it's going to have us download API 29, which is the newest production version, so Android Q or Android 10. So go ahead and do next, and then we'll see all of that. From there, we just click finish, and it'll go through. It'll start downloading all of the components for you. Depending on your internet speed, it will either download quicker. If it's slower, this may take a little while. So I'm just going to go ahead, speed this up, and let it complete, and then we'll get back to it then. All right, so now we can see the Android SDK is up to date. We'll go ahead and click finish. And so now I already have a project here. It may ask you to go through the project wizard, but for this, we'll just go ahead and say start a new Android Studio project, and then it'll walk us through this wizard. So for this one, we're just going to have it start with a empty activity. It just it generates a couple more things for you. And we'll do next. And so this one, I'm just going to call this Cody Engel dot. So for the application, we're going to call this dad jokes and dad jokes for that package name. The save location, I'm going to update this one to be in my tutorials section. Just have this wherever you want it to be saved. and then we'll update that so it has dad jokes at the end, so we're not just saving it to the root tutorials directory. And then we're going to do the Kotlin language, and from here, minimum API level. So Lollipop is still a pretty popular one if you want to go with that. For this, I'm just gonna go up to Marshmallow. Yeah, for the purpose of this, we'll go off of Marshmallow instead of Lollipop. Lollipop's been out for a while, and Marshmallow has also been out for a while. But anyway, I digress. We go here, we click Finish, and it should launch for you. For whatever reason, it keeps launching on my second monitor. So let me bring this down. So you should now see this happening with a bunch of stuff. So you'll get like a what's new in 3.5, and then you'll see over here it syncing with your project and everything like that. One thing, so you have a new version of Kotlin is available. So for this, just because we're starting off fresh, I'm going to go ahead and install this. I would recommend probably do the same. And this just goes ahead and downloads a plugin for you just to make sure you can do development with Kotlin in Android Studio in the nicest way possible. So once you install that plugin, though, you'll have to restart Android Studio. I'm going to go ahead and wait for this to complete those. So there's this background task with it indexing. So go ahead, restart it. And so you can see now restarted. It's going through, just configuring the build again. Once that's complete, we can get started. So what I like to do whenever I'm starting a new project with Android Studio is I like to just make sure that everything is set up and running properly. So before I change any code or anything like that, I like to just run it. So for this one, if you come up here and then do Open AVD Manager, it looks like my previous install of Android Studio is still hanging around. So we have a couple of system images there that are missing, but you shouldn't see that. We'll just do this to do Open AVD Manager. And so for this one, it's asking me to download it. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up real quick just to start completely fresh. And so for this one, what I'll do is I will click Create Virtual Device. And from here, I prefer doing these builds on, or running the emulator on devices that have a lower resolution. It just, it usually ends up performing a little bit better from my experience. So this one is going to be 1080 as opposed to, say this one that would be 1440. So we will click Next on the Pixel 3a. And then you have to download a system image, so we'll go ahead and do that, and also allow the train or truck to go by while it's downloading. Whenever you're downloading the system images, it usually takes a little bit of time, so never hurts to kind of let it download, go grab some coffee, and then come back. So. Alright, so now we can see component installer is complete, and we'll click Finish. So now we have that, so we'll click Next. And what I like to do for my naming is I'll give them like, what is this device going to be? So this one is going to be for development, and it's on API 29. I don't really worry too much about what the base device is, because in my experience, it doesn't really have any impact. But so another one would be like if I'm going to have database tests, I'll have an emulator that is just for running those database tests. If I have one that's just for doing like sprint demos, I'll have one just for that, just so it's kind of my environment for whatever I'm doing. And then for the device frame, I like to uncheck this. I don't really care too much for the device frame. It ends up taking up extra space, so I just uncheck that one. If you want to keep it, that's fine, though. It'll show up as what the device you picked will look like. So in that case, it'll look like a Pixel 3a XL. But for me, just going to disable that and then click Finish. And now we'll have this over here. So I'll go ahead and click the Run icon. And it launched into another window. So bear with me while I move this over. And we'll close out of that. We'll do some window rearranging. And this is usually just like my general window management when I'm doing Android development. So I'll have the emulator over here where I can easily click back over to it, but still leaving Android Studio in the majority of the window. So we do that, and then I will go ahead and click the Run App button. So the Run button that we clicked before just launches the emulator, gets it into a good spot, and then we can click Run. Alternatively, you can just click Run from here, and it'll launch the emulator and run the app, but in my experience, sometimes the emulator will get hung up. I'll get into a spot where it can't actually run the app, so I just like to have the emulator running in the background before I do anything else. So, but we go ahead, we run it, we can see Hello World is showing up here. So we're all good in that sense. We know that that's building correctly. The next thing that we want to do is go to our Gradle file. So you can do Command-Shift-O and type Gradle. Alternatively though, you can come over here to Project and then expand app, or sorry, not expand app. Expand Gradle scripts. You can tell I use this a lot more to actually navigate than the side navigation, but for here there's going to be two Gradle scripts that we will care about for this project, which will be the project one and then the module one. The project one, this allows us to specify project level things. A lot of times if you have different plugins, you'll be defining them here. And then the other one is for our actual application module. So these are just some different settings that you have. So I'll zoom in here, and so you can see we have Kotlin Android extensions, and then down here we have our dependencies. So over here there's also the default config, so we're just saying what the application ID is. This has to be unique if you're releasing it to the App Store, or just installing it on your device as well. And then we're specifying the minimum SDK version, which is 23, our target SDK version, which is 29. You typically want your target SDK version to be the most recent version that is stable. So in our case, it's 29. Then we have our version code and then our version name. So the version code, the main thing with this is you always want this to be greater than your previous release one. So for all of our development, we are always going to just have version code 1, but if we were to release this onto the Google Play Store, we would do our first release is 1, and then our next release would have to be 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. So the last one is with our dependencies. When we built the application or when we set it up initially, it pulls in these ones by default. What I'm going to do is go ahead and update the versions though. So it's saying that a new version is available. So we're just going to update this to 1.1.1 or 1.1.0, and then this one 1.1.0. For our Android implementation, so initially for this, we are not going to be writing espresso tests. So I'm going to actually just delete those to clean things up a bit. We can go ahead and do sync now just to make sure that nothing is broken. And then from there, I want to set this up to have the other libraries that we are planning on using, at least for this initial version. So for our dad jokes, we are going to use Retrofit. So this is a library by Square. This makes our networking code much easier. It's much more maintainable. So if we look over here, this is just the README documents, and then they give us the ability to, or they give us what the Gradle command should look like. So we'll just go ahead, copy this over, and then I'm just going to do an extra space. So these are just third-party libraries. And so for the insert latest version, the easiest way for you to find the latest version of anything is to just go to the GitHub repository for it. So we're over here, and then go to releases, and then we can see all the most current releases. So it looks like The most recent one is 2.6.1. So we will go ahead, update this to say 2.6.1. And then if you do Option Enter on the Mac, on Windows it'll be a slightly different one, but there's this option to convert these to a G string, which will be 2 quotes instead of 1. I like to do that just because it makes things a little bit more consistent. So I'm going to update these ones as well. The other nice thing, if you're using this version of a string, is you can extract these out to variables. We won't be doing that for this project, but just a nice to know. All right, so now that we have retrofit there, we'll go ahead, we'll sync this just to make sure that we have the correct library version. Usually if you add multiple libraries at the same time and you're not positive if the version is correct, sometimes this may not actually be the version that you wanted. You'll get errors and it just becomes more of an issue to try to figure out like what dependency is failing. But we can see here we're able to pull in retrofit without any issues. And so with that, there are some other options though with retrofit. So there are these adapters here. And so looks like not quite that one. So we're going to go ahead, search for Moshi now on GitLab. And this is another Square library. And we're going to use this for our JSON parsing. All right, so from here, we'll just copy over this implementation of Moshi. Drop that one there. All right, we'll go ahead, sync that one. And then, so there is going to be a Moshi retrofit adapter that we want. Converter. And for this one, it's just going to be here. So we do that. And then it's saying that you want to do the latest Moshi version, from what I can tell anyway. So we move that to there, update this to GString. And then I'm just going to move Moshi up above here. It truthfully shouldn't matter, but I just like to have my dependencies in order of kind of where they need to come in at. So since retrofit is depending on Moshi, I'm just going to have it above there. But again, it doesn't really matter. This is more for my organization. And it looks like, so we failed to resolve Moshi 1.8.0. So it looks like perhaps that version doesn't line up with Moshi's version. So for that, we'll just follow this Maven link. So for here, Maven Central this is going to be where the libraries are actually stored. So this is another way of seeing like what the latest version is. So 2.6.2 is the version, which makes me wonder if 2.6.2 is also the newest version of retrofit. So we'll just go ahead, try that out real quick. All right, so it looks like it worked. So we'll do 2.6.2 for retrofit and for our Moshi converter. And from here, retrofit, we'll have an adapter that we want. So for their adapters, you can see there's an RxJava 2 adapter. So we will go ahead and use that one because we will be using RxJava for this project. Paste that there. This is also most likely 2.6.2. And then the last one that we want to pull in is going to be RxJava. So it brings us to this RxJava project. The nice thing with this is it's giving us this release candidate. We aren't going to be using RxJava 3 though. We're going to be sticking with RxJava 2, which just mostly because RxJava 3 is still on release candidate. I haven't had a chance to fully look through all of it, so we're going to stick with 2 for the time being. But if we go over here and, if we go over here to the RxJava 2 version, the implementation will be here. So we'll copy that. And then we'll drop RxJava there. And it looks like they're saying the newest version from Maven Central is 2.2.12. So we will pull that in and do sync now. And we're getting close to being done with our libraries. So these are our base implementation libraries that we will be using. We're also going to be using, so Dagger will be what we use for our dependency injection. Actually, we want Dagger 2. We want Dagger 2 from somewhere. Sometimes you just kind of have to Google around to find it. So let's see, Dagger 2. There we go. So the Google version of Dagger, and scroll around until we find the dependency that we're looking for. Yeah, so it looks like we'll want these. I'm going to change this one to implementation. I don't think that one actually needs API. And then annotation processor, since we're using Kotlin, this has to be updated to capped. It's the Kotlin annotation processor. And then the version is 2.2.4. Or 2.24, not 2.2.4. 2.24. Convert that to the G string, convert that to G string. And then when we go to sync, it's going to fail because we are not able to find capped. So capped Kotlin, we will go ahead and look at that. And we can see, so plugins, we can just apply the plugin here. So I'll just copy this. And then when you go to apply the plugins, they just need to go here. Let me just double check. All right, looks like this can come in anywhere. I'm going to just have it below our Android ones. So we go ahead and do try again. And then we can see that worked. So now we have Dagger Setup. So Dagger is going to handle all of our dependency injection. The next thing that we want to do is get our view models and our Android architecture components set up. So Android architecture components. We come over here for this. So what we're going to be using for the architecture components are the view models. So I'm just going to search for Android architecture components, view model, and then dependency, just to see where that is, adding the components to your project. So when you're using Android architecture components, you need to add the Google repository. So this is actually going to be, instead of this Gradle file, it will be our project level one. And actually, you can see they've already included Google, so we don't have to do that step. The next one is going to be for our for our view models. So they're saying Kotlin extension modules are supported for Android X dependencies. These modules have the suffix KTX. We're just going to pull these ones in. So the view model, over here to app. Since these aren't third party, we'll have them up here. And then Android view model version. And we can see here for lifecycle, the lifecycle version is currently 2.1.0. So 2.1.0, we will go ahead and try and sync this, make sure that works. All right, cool. All right, everyone. So I am back. Hopefully this cut isn't too dramatic, but it is the next day for me. Yeah, let's just finish up getting all of these implementations in place. So for what we have with our dependencies, this should be good for the time being. The only thing that we have left now are just adding some test implementations. So let's go ahead and do that. So for this project, we are going to be using a project called mock-k. This is going to be used in place of Mockito. And so for that, we can, you can kind of go through and look at it, mock-k.io. I'm just going to go over here, view it on GitHub, just to make sure that everything's looking okay. So yeah, so their release 1.9.3, so that one, this is not the one that we care about. The one that we are going to care about is 1.9. So we're going to go down here for our test implementation. io.mock-k, And then the version, again, 1.9. And then just while I'm over here, I'll clean this guy up. Go ahead and sync. While we were doing that sync, it's showing that our performance could be improved. So we'll come back to that later. I'm not going to worry about our heap size. But just so you know, doing that, it could potentially make it a bit faster when we're doing builds by allocating more memory to builds. But anyway, so the last one that we're going to do for this is going to be using a project called AssertK. Search for all of GitHub. And it's from this Willow Tree Apps organization. Currently, they are on 0.2. Thankfully, they give us the compile right there. So we can do test implementation. So AssertK will just allow us to write our unit tests in a bit of a nicer way. But that is the last dependency that we need to pull in. From there, at this point, you should have your project with the main activity. The next one is for your layout. You have this simple layout. So this is just looking at the designer. Alternatively, if we look at the text, you can see the XML. We can expand the preview window. And then all this allows us to do is kind of inline. We can say like, oh, hello world, or please like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and click the notification bell to be notified of new videos. So things like that. And then over here are values. So we have some color resources. We aren't going to do anything with these for probably the next few videos, but we will be using these soon. Our style, again, we won't be doing anything with styles or themes in the next few videos, but I do intend to revisit those, come back to that, and clean things up, show you how you can take advantage of that. And then the last one is our strings. We will do a little bit with this probably in the near future, just because you do want to have everything in the strings file in terms of like text that you are displaying in the applications. And when we get to that point, I will explain kind of why. But other than that, that's all that I have for this video. In the next one, I intend to show you how we would build the dad joke application. So as you're going through the app, it shows you dad jokes coming in from a API source. So you're doing networking calls and being able to refresh those. So we'll get into layouts and things like that. And the intent there is just to show you how you would build an app really quick, get your feet wet with that. It is not going to be in a very well-designed way. In subsequent videos, I intend to kind of break things up, so we will go from poorly designed app to moving into something more like test-driven development, kind of getting into that, breaking up what we have at that point, and then further getting into things like how do you use Dagger to make dependency injection easier? How do you make use of styles and themes to make your app a little bit easier to change the look and feel of? And then hopefully getting into more app front-end design. How do you make it look nice? How do you do animations, things like that? And ideally, as I just keep adding more and more to this list, doing CI, CD, how do you integrate this with something like Travis or Circle CI to do continuous deployments to the Play Store, and hopefully kind of show you the full life cycle of developing an Android application from the ground up, going from, again, poor design, just quick and dirty, to well-designed, kind of the way that I develop apps. Anyway, though, thank you so much for watching. I know this one was a longer one. It's a bit different from the Kotlin series. I intend for them to be a bit longer and kind of showing you a full slice of something as opposed to just a bunch of shorter, quick videos. So hopefully you enjoyed it, but I will catch you in the next one.